The docking clamps locked into place with a metallic thud that echoed through the hull of the Aurora's edge. Captain Hyun stood on the bridge, watching through the viewport as the massive Galactic Council station filled her vision. The station was enormous, a spinning wheel of metal and light that housed representatives from thousands of worlds. "Docking complete, Captain," said her pilot, a young man named Doyun. "All systems green." Hyun nodded. This was supposed to be routine. Drop off their survey data, resupply, maybe grab a decent meal that didn't come from a food printer. She'd made this stop a dozen times before. "I'll head to the station and file our reports," she said, moving toward the airlock. "You have the ship, Doyun." The young pilot grinned. "Try to have some fun out there, Captain. You've been working too hard." Hyun allowed herself a small smile. Her crew was good. They'd spent 6 months mapping uncharted systems, and everyone was ready for shore leave. She stepped through the airlock and into the station's receiving area. The air smelled different here. Recycled, yes, but mixed with 1,000 different atmospheric preferences. She could taste something sweet, something sulfurous, something she couldn't identify. Aliens of every shape and size moved through the corridors. Some walked, some floated, some slithered. She'd barely made it 10 steps when they appeared. 4 galactic enforcement officers, their armor gleaming under the station's lights. They moved with purpose, forming a semicircle around her. The lead officer was tall and thin, his skin a pale blue that seemed to shimmer. "Captain Hyun of Earth?" His voice came through a translator, flat and emotionless. "Yes?" Hyun felt her muscles tense. She'd done nothing wrong. This had to be a mistake. "You are under arrest for violation of Galactic Law, Section 47, Paragraph 3, the Predator Protocol." The words didn't make sense. Hyun stared at the officer. "There must be some mistake. I'm human. We were cleared for council membership 200 years ago. New evidence suggests otherwise. You will come with us." 2 of the officers moved forward, producing restraints. Hyun could have fought. Her body was already calculating distances, angles, weak points. But she forced herself to remain still. Fighting would only make things worse. They placed the restraints on her wrists. They were cold and hummed with some kind of energy field. The officers led her through the station, and Hyun was acutely aware of the stares from passing aliens. News traveled fast in the galaxy. The holding cell was small but clean. White walls, a bench, a force field instead of bars. They removed the restraints and left her there without explanation. Hyun sat on the bench and tried to think. The Predator Protocol was one of the most serious laws in the galaxy. 3,000 years ago, a species called the Vrellan had nearly destroyed half the known civilizations. They were apex predators, brutal and efficient. After the Vrellan War, the Council had created strict rules. Any species classified as a predator was banned from holding military positions, from serving on Council security, from 100 different roles. But humans had been tested. They'd passed. Barely according to the history books, but they'd passed. Hours went by. Hyun used the time to stay calm, to meditate like her grandmother had taught her. Breathe in, breathe out. Don't panic. The force field shimmered and disappeared. A man walked in, human, wearing the formal robes of a diplomatic advocate. He was maybe 40 with tired eyes and a datapad clutched in his hand. "Captain Hyun, I'm Minho. I've been assigned to your case." Hyun stood. "Can you tell me what's happening?" Minho gestured for her to sit, then sat beside her. His face was grave. "During your routine docking scan, the station's biosensors flagged you as a potential predator. They ran a full analysis. The results," he paused, "the results put you above the acceptable threshold." "That's impossible. I'm 100% human. No modifications, no alien DNA. I know. I've seen your genetic profile. You're as human as they come." Minho pulled up data on his pad. "But that's the problem. The scan measured your physical traits. Forward-facing eyes for depth perception. High muscle density for your body mass. Persistence hunting stamina. Canine teeth adapted for tearing meat. Hyun, by modern standards, you register as a predator." Hyun felt cold. Modern standards? What changed? The evaluation criteria were updated 5 years ago, made more strict after a border incident with the creche. When humans were first evaluated, the standards were different. Looser. Minho looked at her directly. "If humanity applied for council membership today with these new standards, we might not pass." The implications were staggering. If Hyun was classified as a predator, it wouldn't just affect her. It could affect all of humanity. The council might demand a species-wide reevaluation. When is the trial? Hyun asked. 48 hours. And Hyun, you need to understand something. The prosecutor is Velrith, a crystalline. His people were nearly wiped out by the Vreln. He doesn't compromise on this law. I haven't done anything wrong. I know. But we're not arguing about your actions. We're arguing about what you are. Minho stood. I'll do everything I can. We have good people working on this. Ambassador Jiwon is personally involved. After Minho left, Hyun lay on the bench and stared at the ceiling. She thought about her crew, about Doyen's grin and the trust in his eyes. She thought about her ship, about the stars she'd mapped and the worlds she'd seen. She thought about Earth, about running through forests as a child, about climbing trees and scraping her knees, about her grandmother teaching her to fish in the stream behind their house, about the taste of grilled meat at family gatherings, about teeth made for tearing, about eyes that looked forward tracking prey. She'd never thought of herself as a predator. She was just human, just herself, but maybe that was the problem. The next day, Minho returned with Ambassador Jiwon. The ambassador was older, maybe 60, with silver hair and sharp eyes. She looked at Hyun the way a general might look at a soldier before battle. Captain, how are you holding up? I've been better, Ambassador. Jiwon smiled, but there was no humor in it. I imagine so. Captain, I want you to understand what we're facing. This trial isn't just about you. Every human in council space is watching. If we lose, if you're classified as a predator, there will be consequences. Trade restrictions, travel limitations. Some are already calling for humanity to be removed from the council entirely. I understand. Do you? Jiwon leaned forward. Because I need to know that you can handle this. The pressure, the scrutiny. Can you stand in front of the entire Galactic Council and defend not just yourself, but our entire species? Hyun met the ambassador's eyes. In that moment, she felt something shift inside her. A clarity, a focus. Yes, she said simply. Jiwon studied her for a long moment, then nodded. Good, because tomorrow the whole galaxy will be watching. That night, alone in her cell, Hyun didn't meditate. Instead, she thought about what made her human. Not the biology, not the teeth or the eyes or the muscles, but the choices. The time she'd pulled a wounded crew member from a burning compartment. The time she'd talked down a panicking alien pilot instead of shooting his damaged ship. The 1,000 small decisions to be kind, to be patient, to be better than her instincts told her to be. She was a predator by biology, but by choice? By choice, she was something else entirely. The trial would begin in the morning, and Hyun would be ready. The courtroom was beyond anything Hyun had imagined. It stretched upward like a cathedral, with viewing platforms rising in tiers that seemed to touch the ceiling far above. Each platform held representatives from different worlds. Some sat, some hovered. Some existed in environment pods filled with water or methane or stranger things. Thousands of species all here to watch. Hyun walked into the center of the room, flanked by Minho and Ambassador Jiwon. Her legs felt steady, but her heart hammered in her chest. She wore her dress uniform, crisp and clean, with Earth symbol on her shoulder. At the front of the chamber sat Magistrate Quarim. He was ancient, his species unknown to Hyun. He looked like living stone, gray and weathered, with eyes that glowed a soft amber. When he spoke, his voice resonated through the chamber without need for a translator. This trial concerns Captain Hyun of Earth, accused of violating the Predator Protocol. The prosecution may begin. Velrith rose from his position. He was tall and crystalline, his body refracting light in rainbow patterns. When he moved, he made a sound like wind chimes, but his voice was hard. Magistrate Quarim, honored representatives, I present evidence that Captain Hyun is a predator species and thus in violation of galactic law. A hologram appeared in the center of the room, larger than life. It showed Hyun's bioscan in perfect detail. Her skeleton glowed blue, her muscles red, her organs green. Data scrolled alongside the image. Observe the forward-facing eyes, Velrith said. Positioned for binocular vision and depth perception. This is a predator trait, designed for tracking and catching prey. The hologram zoomed in on Hyun's eyes. She watched herself being dissected by data, reduced to measurements and classifications. Note the muscle density, significantly higher than prey species of similar size, built for pursuit, for the chase, for the kill. The image shifted to show her legs, her arms, the way her muscles layered over bone. The respiratory and cardiovascular systems. Hyun can run for hours without stopping. This is persistence hunting, a predator strategy used to exhaust prey until they cannot run anymore. Hyun felt the weight of thousands of eyes upon her. Some of the aliens in the viewing platforms were shifting uncomfortably. She could feel their fear. Finally, the teeth. The hologram zoomed to her mouth. Canines designed for tearing meat, incisors for cutting, molars for grinding, an omnivore's teeth, yes, but optimized for consuming flesh. Velrith turned to face the magistrate. By the current standards, Captain Hyun exceeds the predator threshold in 4 separate categories. The evidence is clear. Minho stood. Objection. Captain Hyun's DNA has been thoroughly analyzed. She is 100% human with no genetic modification of any kind. Humanity was evaluated and approved for council membership 200 years ago. That evaluation stands. Does it? Velrith's form shimmered with agitation. The standards have changed, Advocate Minho. They have become more precise, more accurate. Perhaps the original evaluation was flawed. Magistrate Quorum raised a hand. The prosecution makes a valid point. However, we must also consider historical context. Advocate Minho, you may present your defense. Minho called his first witness. Dr. Tajan walked into the center of the chamber. He was older, maybe 50, with the calm demeanor of someone who dealt in facts, not emotions. Dr. Tajan, you are a xenobiologist specializing in human evolutionary history, correct? Yes. Can you confirm that Captain Hyun is genetically human? Dr. Tajan nodded. I can. I've examined her genetic profile personally. There is no doubt whatsoever. She is as human as any person born on Earth. And can you explain to the court why humans have these predator traits? Dr. Tajan turned to address Magistrate Quorum. Humans evolved on a world with many predators. To survive, they needed to be adaptable. They developed traits that allowed them to hunt, yes, but also to avoid being hunted. Humans are not apex predators. They are omnivores who succeeded through cooperation and intelligence. Velrith stood. But they did hunt, did they not? They killed prey animals? They did, for food. For survival. And they killed other humans? In wars and conflicts over territory and resources. Dr. Tajan hesitated. Yes, humanity has a violent history. I won't deny that. Thank you, Doctor. No further questions. The courtroom erupted in whispers. The sound echoed off the walls like static. Hyun felt the mood shift. Velrith had made his point. Humans were violent. Humans were dangerous. Minho called his next witness. Doyen walked in, and Hyun felt a surge of warmth. Her young pilot looked nervous but determined. Ensign Doyen, you serve under Captain Hyun, correct? Yes, sir. For 3 years. Tell the court about your captain. What kind of leader is she? Doyen looked at Hyun, then at the magistrate. She's the best captain I've ever served under. She's fair. She listens. When things go wrong, she's the first one to figure out a solution. Has she ever acted aggressively without cause? Never. Captain Hyun always looks for peaceful solutions first. Last year, we encountered a damaged transport ship. Pirates were circling it, waiting to scavenge. Captain Hyun could have avoided the situation, but she didn't. She put our ship between the pirates and the transport. She saved 17 people that day. And did she harm the pirates? She disabled their weapons and let them flee. She said killing them would make us no better than they were. Minho turned to the court. This is the behavior of a predator? Protecting the weak? Showing mercy to enemies? Velrith rose again. Words are easy, Advocate. Actions in one moment do not erase millions of years of evolution. Captain Hyun's biology speaks for itself. Magistrate Quorum leaned forward. The court recognizes the complexity of this case. Both sides present valid arguments. I will review the evidence during recess. We will reconvene tomorrow. The sound of his voice was final. The viewing platforms began to empty. Thousands of aliens filing out in waves. Hyun stood in the center of the chamber, feeling very small. Minho approached her. You did well. Doyen's testimony was powerful. But it wasn't enough, Hyun said quietly. Not yet. But we're not done fighting. Ambassador Jiwon joined them. Her face was troubled. I'm going to contact Earth. We need to review the original evaluation data. There has to be something we're missing. That night, Hyun sat in her cell and thought about Doyun's testimony, about the transport ship and the pirates. She remembered that day clearly. Her first instinct had been tactical. Assess threat level, calculate firepower, identify weak points. Predator instincts. But then she'd thought about the people on that transport. Families, maybe. Children. Someone's parents or friends. And her instincts had changed. Protect. Defend. Save. Were those predator instincts too? Or something else? The force field shimmered. Minho entered carrying a data pad. He looked excited. We found something. In the archives. Information about humanity's original evaluation. Yun sat up. What kind of information? The kind that might change everything. Minho's eyes were bright. The humans who represented Earth during the first evaluation were carefully chosen. Vegetarians, pacifists, meditation practitioners, people who represented humanity's best qualities. So we cheated? No, we played by the rules. The Council asked for representatives and Earth sent people who would pass the evaluation. It was smart politics, Yun frowned. But it wasn't the whole truth. No, it wasn't. Earth sent its gentlest people to prove humanity could be peaceful. But Yun, that's not deception. That's hope. That's us saying we want to be better than our worst impulses. Will it help in court? Minho's smile faded. I don't know. But it's something. It shows that humanity has always been aware of what we are. And we've always tried to be more than just our biology. After he left, Yun lay in the darkness and thought about her grandmother, the old woman who had taught her to fish, who had also taught her to release the small ones back into the stream. Just because we can catch them doesn't mean we should, she'd said. Biology wasn't destiny. It was just the starting point. Tomorrow Hyun would stand before the galaxy again, and somehow she had to make them understand that. Ambassador Jiwon paced in her quarters like a caged animal. Minho sat at her desk scrolling through files on his datapad. Spread across the table were documents, reports, and historical records dating back 2 centuries. There has to be something we can use, Jiwon muttered. Some precedent, some loophole. Minho rubbed his tired eyes. They'd been at this for hours. The law is clear. If Hyun is classified as a predator, she loses her command, and the Council will have grounds to reevaluate all of humanity. Then we change the conversation. We make this about behavior, not biology. Velrith won't let us. He's too good. Every time we talk about Hyun's actions, he brings it back to instinct and evolution. A knock at the door interrupted them. A woman entered, younger than Jiwon, but carrying herself with quiet authority. She had the look of someone who spent most of their time in archives rather than courtrooms. Ambassador, I'm So-hee, diplomatic historian. You requested information about first contact. Jiwon gestured to a chair. Yes. Specifically about humanity's evaluation for council membership. Minho found something troubling. So-hee nodded. I've been digging deeper. The original evaluation report is fascinating. Earth chose its representatives very carefully. Out of 8 billion people, they selected 50 individuals to undergo testing. We know this, Minho said. Vegetarians, pacifists, peaceful people. Right. But here's what's interesting. The Council's evaluation team noted it in their report. They questioned whether the sample was representative of the broader human population. So he pulled up a document. Quote, the selected individuals display remarkable restraint and cooperative behavior. However, preliminary surveys suggest significant variance within the human population. Recommend broader sampling. Jiwon leaned forward. But they approved humanity anyway. They did, and I think I know why. So he opened another file. There's a classified addendum to the report. It was sealed for 100 years, but the seal expired 20 years ago. Most people don't even know it exists. She displayed the document. It was signed by 5 senior council members, including one name that made Minho sit up straight. Councillor Thex, he's still alive. Still on the council. He was the deciding vote, so he said. The evaluation was split. 3 votes to approve, 3 votes to reject. Thex broke the tie, and in his statement he wrote something unusual. She read from the document. Humanity possesses predator traits, this is undeniable. However, they also display unprecedented levels of self-awareness regarding these traits. They have built complex social structures specifically to restrain their violent impulses. They create art about their struggle between violence and peace. They teach their children to be gentle in a harsh world. I vote to approve their application not despite their predator nature, but because they have spent 10,000 years learning to control it. The room fell silent. Jiwon stared at the words on the screen. He knew, she whispered. Thex knew exactly what we were, and he let us in anyway. Minho stood. We need to talk to him. If he testifies, if he explains his reasoning, it could change everything. He's old, so he warned. Nearly 400 years old. His species ages slowly, but he's still ancient. And he's reclusive. Rarely attends council sessions anymore. Where does he live? Station Epsilon, the retirement sector. But good luck getting an audience. He doesn't like visitors. G1 was already moving toward the door. Then we'll have to be persuasive. Meanwhile, in her cell, Hyun had her own visitor. The force field dropped and an alien entered that she'd never seen before. He was hunched with age, his skin a mottled gray-green, his movements slow and deliberate. But his eyes were clear and sharp. "Captain Hyun, I am Counselor Thex." Hyun stood immediately. She knew the name. One of the oldest and most respected members of the council. "Counselor, I'm honored." Thex waved a withered hand. "No need for formality. I'm just an old fool who should have stayed retired." He sat on the bench with a heavy sigh. "I wanted to see you for myself. To look at the human who has caused such trouble." "I didn't mean to cause trouble, sir." "Of course you didn't. You simply existed. Sometimes that's enough." Thex studied her with those sharp eyes. "Do you know why I voted to accept humanity into the council?" "No, sir. Because you reminded me of my own people. Long ago, before we learned wisdom, we were predators too. We hunted, we fought, we conquered. We nearly destroyed ourselves in wars that lasted centuries." He paused. "But we changed. We chose to be better. When I looked at humanity's application, I saw that same choice, that same struggle. Then why is this happening? Why am I on trial? Because fear is easier than understanding. Because the galaxy remembers the Vrellan War, and anything that reminds them of that horror makes them afraid." Thex leaned forward. "Let me ask you something, Captain. Have you ever killed without reason?" The question hung in the air. Hyun thought carefully before answering. "I've killed in defense. Of my ship, of my crew, of innocent people. But never for pleasure. Never for sport. Never when there was another choice." "And if you had the power to destroy your enemies completely with no consequences, would you?" "No." "Why not?" Hyun met his gaze. "Because they're people too. Because violence should be the last option, not the first. Because I want to be better than my worst impulses." Thex smiled, a strange expression on his alien features. "That is why I voted for humanity. That right there. You have the capacity for violence, but you also have the wisdom to restrain it. That is not weakness, Captain. That is strength. Will you testify? Will you tell the court what you just told me?" The old counselor stood slowly. "I will do what I must. But understand, Captain, the decision is not mine alone. The galaxy must choose whether to see humanity as a threat or as an ally. I can only give them perspective. The rest is up to you." He left as quietly as he'd come. Hyun sat in the silence, processing his words. The capacity for violence. The wisdom to restrain it. Was that enough? Could the galaxy understand the difference? Across the station, Ambassador Ji-won and Minho finally located Thex's quarters. The door was simple, unmarked, easy to miss among the thousands of other residences. Ji-won pressed the call button. Nothing happened. She pressed it again. "He's not going to answer," Minho said. "Then we wait." They waited for an hour. Then two. Finally, the door slid open. Thex stood there, looking amused. "Ambassador Ji-won, I was wondering when you'd find me." "Counselor Thex, we need your help. Captain Hyun is being judged for something that isn't her fault. Your testimony could save her." "I've already spoken with your captain. Remarkable woman, honest, clear-eyed about what she is." "Then you'll testify?" Thex considered. "I will. But not to save Captain Hyun. She doesn't need saving. I will testify to save the council from making a terrible mistake." "What do you mean? If we judge species solely on biology, we become no better than the Vrellan. We become the monsters we fought against. The law exists to protect the innocent, not to punish those who have done no wrong." Thex's eyes glowed with an inner fire. "Captain Hyun has committed no crime. She has acted with honor and restraint. If we condemn her for what she might do, rather than what she has done, we betray everything the council stands for." Ji-won felt hope rising in her chest. "When will you testify?" "Tomorrow. When the trial resumes, I will tell the council what I should have said 200 years ago. That humanity is not perfect, but they are trying, and in this imperfect galaxy that is enough." That night, 3 groups of people prepared for the next day's trial. Felrith reviewed his evidence, confident in his position. The law was clear. The biology was undeniable. Minho and Ji-won worked on their strategy. building their case around Thex's testimony and Hyun's character. And Hyun sat in her cell meditating, not to calm herself but to understand herself. She thought about every choice she'd ever made. Every moment she'd chosen mercy over vengeance, patience over anger, understanding over judgment. She was a predator. The biology didn't lie, but she was also human. And being human meant more than teeth and eyes and muscles. It meant choosing every single day to be something better than instinct demanded. Tomorrow the galaxy would judge her, but Hyun had already judged herself, and she knew what she found. Not a monster, not a saint, just a person trying her best in a complicated universe. That would have to be enough. The courtroom felt different on the second day. More crowded, more tense. Word had spread across the galaxy about the trial, and species from hundreds of worlds wanted to watch. The viewing platforms were packed with observers, their various forms creating a tapestry of colors and shapes that stretched up into the chamber's heights. Hyun walked to her position with steady steps. She'd barely slept, but her mind was clear. Beside her, Minho looked determined. Ambassador Ji-won sat behind them, her face carved from stone. Magistrate Quorum called the court to order. His voice resonated through the vast chamber. "We will continue with the defense's case. Advocate Minho, you may call your next witness." But before Minho could speak, Velrith stood. His crystalline body caught the light, throwing rainbows across the floor. "Magistrate, before the defense continues, I have additional evidence to present. Evidence that I believe is crucial to this case." Minho frowned. "Objection. The prosecution has already presented their case." "This is rebuttal evidence," Velrith said smoothly, "relevant to the testimony we heard yesterday about Captain Hyun's character and humanity's peaceful nature." Magistrate Quorum considered. "I will allow it, but be brief, prosecutor." Velrith moved to the center of the chamber. With a gesture, he activated the hologram projector. The air above them filled with images. Historical images. Human images. "The defense wants us to believe that humanity is peaceful. That Captain Hyun represents a species that has learned restraint." His voice grew harder. "Let me show you the truth about humanity." The first image appeared. Ancient soldiers in metal armor, standing over fallen enemies. The caption read, "Roman Conquest, 200 BCE. Humans have been waging war for their entire recorded history," Velrith said. "They conquered each other's lands, enslaved each other's people, destroyed each other's cities." The images changed. Faster now. Battles, weapons, destruction. Swords became guns. Guns became cannons. Cannons became missiles. World War I, 20 million dead. World War II, 70 million dead. The images showed trenches, bombed cities, mushroom clouds. They created weapons powerful enough to destroy their entire planet. And they used them. On each other. The courtroom was silent. Hyun felt the weight of history pressing down on her. She couldn't deny any of it. It was all true. "Genocides, massacres, conquests." Velrith's voice cut through the silence. "This is humanity's legacy. This is what predators do when given power." The images stopped. The courtroom lights came back up. Hyun could see the faces in the viewing platforms. Fear, disgust, horror. Minho stood. "Objection. This is ancient history. Modern humanity has moved past these conflicts." "Have they?" Velrith turned to face him. "It's been less than 300 years since their last global war. A fraction of time for a species. Can they truly claim to have changed?" Ambassador Ji-won stood, her voice ringing out. "Yes, we can." Magistrate Quorum looked at her. "Ambassador, you are not recognized to speak." "Then recognize me," Ji-won said firmly. "Because I will not sit here and let our entire species be judged by our worst moments without context." Quorum paused, then nodded. "You may speak." Ji-won walked to the center of the chamber. She stood where the horrible images had just been displayed. She looked small there. One human woman facing thousands of alien observers. "Everything the prosecutor showed you is true. Humanity has a violent history. We've done terrible things to each other and to our world." She took a breath. "But that's not the whole story. Those wars, those atrocities, they taught us something. They taught us the cost of violence. The price of hatred." She gestured and new images appeared. Humans helping each other after disasters. Medical workers in war zones. Teachers in poor villages. Scientists collaborating across borders. We learned. We changed. We built international laws to prevent genocide. We created organizations to promote peace. We taught our children that cooperation is stronger than conquest. Ji-won's voice grew passionate. Our violent past doesn't define us. Our choice to move beyond it does. Beautiful words, Velrith said. But words are not evidence. Biology is evidence. Evolution is evidence. Captain Hyun's very body is evidence that humans are predators. Minho called his next witness. I call Ensign Bowman to the stand. A young man walked into the chamber. He was nervous, fidgeting with his uniform, but his voice was steady. Ensign Bowman, you're a specialist in xenobiology, correct? Yes, sir. It's my field of study. Can you explain to the court how humans evolved? Bowman nodded. Humans evolved on a planet with many predators. Big predators, cats with teeth as long as knives, bears that could kill with one swipe. To survive, humans had to be smart. They couldn't outrun these predators, couldn't outfight them. So they learned to cooperate. He gestured and a hologram appeared showing early humans. They hunted in groups. They shared food. They took care of their sick and injured. These traits, cooperation and empathy, became as important to survival as any predator instinct. So humans are both predator and prey? Exactly. Humans evolved to hunt, yes, but they also evolved to be hunted. They learned to watch for danger, to work together, to value the group over the individual. That's why human social structures are so complex. That's why they create art and music and stories about being good to each other. Velrith stepped forward, but they did hunt. They did kill. The biology remains the same regardless of motivation. The biology is complex, Bowman said carefully. Yes, humans have predator traits, but they also have traits that predators don't usually have. High emotional intelligence, strong empathy responses, the ability to see themselves in others. True predators like the Vrelen didn't have these traits. Are you saying humans are not predators? I'm saying humans are something unique. They're persistence hunters who learned that cooperating was better than competing. They're predators who chose to build civilizations together instead of fighting alone. The courtroom erupted in discussion. Aliens talking in hundreds of languages, their voices creating a sound like wind through leaves. Magistrate Quorum called for order. This testimony is compelling, but it does not change the facts. Captain Hyun exceeds the predator threshold by measurable standards. The law is clear. Then the law is wrong. Every head turned. In the back of the courtroom, a figure stood. Slowly, they moved forward. Hyun couldn't identify their species. They wore a hooded cloak that concealed their form. Who are you? Magistrate Quorum asked. The figure reached the center of the chamber and lowered their hood. What stood revealed was not flesh, but light. A holographic projection, but of such sophistication that it seemed almost real. The face was angular, sharp, with too many teeth. Hyun recognized the species from history files. Vreln. The courtroom exploded in panic. Alarms blared. Security officers rushed forward. But the hologram raised a hand. Peace, I am not a threat. I am a memory, an archived consciousness of the last Vreln philosopher. I have observed this trial and I must speak. Magistrate Quorum's voice was shaken. The Vreln are extinct. They were destroyed after the war, all but me. I am preserved as a warning, as a reminder of what happens when predators rule without restraint. The hologram turned to face the courtroom. I have watched humanity for 200 years. I have studied them, and I tell you now they are not like us. How can you say that? Velrith demanded. Look at their history. Look at their violence. I have. And I see the difference. The Vrelin killed because it was our nature. We enjoyed the hunt. We felt no guilt, no remorse. We saw other species as prey and nothing more. The hologram's voice grew quiet. Humans are different. They feel guilt. They grieve their enemies. They create monuments to remember their mistakes. They teach their children that violence is a failure, not a triumph. But they still have the capacity for violence, Velrith argued. As do you. As does every species in this chamber. But capacity is not the same as intent. Humans have the strength to harm, but they choose protection. They have the instinct to dominate, but they build democracies. They have the impulse to take, but they teach generosity. The hologram looked at Hyun. This is what makes them dangerous. Not their predator traits, but their refusal to let those traits control them. The chamber fell silent. The weight of those words settled over everyone like snow. Magistrate Quorum spoke slowly. We will adjourn until tomorrow. I must consider all that has been presented. As the courtroom emptied, Hyun remained standing in the center. Minho approached her. That was unexpected. What do you think it means? Hyun asked. I think it means the galaxy is finally seeing what we've known all along. That being a predator isn't about biology, it's about choice. That night, Hyun didn't return to her cell immediately. She stood at a viewport looking out at the stars. Tomorrow would be the final day. Tomorrow the galaxy would decide what humanity was. But Hyun already knew. She'd always known. Humanity wasn't perfect. They were complicated, contradictory, struggling every day to be better than their instincts told them to be. And maybe that was enough. Maybe that was everything. The final day of the trial arrived with unusual quiet. The viewing platforms filled slowly, aliens taking their places without the usual chatter and noise. Everyone knew this was the end. Whatever happened today would shape the future of human-alien relations for generations. Hyun entered the courtroom feeling strangely calm. She'd spent the night thinking about everything that had been said. The accusations, the evidence, the testimonies. All of it came down to one question. What did it mean to be a predator? Magistrate Quorum took his position at the front of the chamber. His ancient face was unreadable, carved from living stone, eyes glowing with that soft amber light. Before I render judgment, I will hear final statements. Captain Hyun, you may speak. Hyun stood. She walked to the center of the chamber, the same spot where so much evidence had been displayed, where holographic images of human violence had flickered, where the Vreln consciousness had delivered its warning. She stood there, one human woman facing the judgment of the galaxy. I don't know what to say that hasn't already been said, she began. The prosecutor is right. I am a predator by biology. I have the eyes, the teeth, the muscles. I can't change that. I am what evolution made me. She paused, looking up at the thousands of faces watching her. But I'm also more than that. I'm a daughter. I'm a friend. I'm a captain who has sworn to protect her crew. I'm a person who has chosen every day of my life to be kind when I could be cruel, to be patient when I could be angry, to protect when I could destroy. Hyun's voice grew stronger. My grandmother taught me to fish when I was young. We'd sit by the stream behind our house and she'd show me how to catch them. But she also taught me to let the small ones go, to take only what we needed, to respect the life we were taking. She looked at Magistrate Quorum. That's what being human means, understanding that we have power and choosing to use it wisely. 2 years ago, my ship responded to a distress call. A transport vessel carrying families had been disabled by pirates. The pirates were circling, waiting to board and take whatever they wanted. Hyun's eyes found Velrith in the courtroom. My first thought was tactical. How many pirates? What weapons do they have? Can we win this fight? Those are predator thoughts, Velrith said quietly. Yes, they are. But my second thought was about the families on that transport. Children who were scared, parents trying to protect them, people who just wanted to get home safely. Hyun took a breath. We drove off the pirates. We escorted the transport to safety. One of the people we saved that day was a young girl. She gave me a drawing before she left, a picture of our ship with a heart next to it. Hyun reached into her uniform pocket and pulled out a piece of paper, carefully folded. She held it up. I keep this with me, to remember why I do what I do. Not because I'm a predator, not because I'm human, but because I chose to be someone who protects rather than harms. She returned to her position. Minho squeezed her shoulder briefly. Magistrate Quorum spoke. Does the prosecution wish to make a closing statement? Velrith stood. He moved to the center slowly, his crystalline form catching and refracting the light. For a long moment he said nothing. Then he turned to face Hyun directly. I owe you an apology, Captain Hyun. The courtroom erupted in shocked whispers. Velrith raised a hand for silence. My people were nearly exterminated by the Vreln. We lost billions. Our homeworld was burned, our colonies destroyed. When the Council created the Predator Protocol, we supported it absolutely. We still believe, that predators cannot be trusted with power. Velrith's voice softened. But I have spent 3 days watching you, studying you, listening to testimony about who you are, and I have realized something. The girl you saved, the one who drew you a picture, was my niece. Her name is Kayla. She's 8 years old. The courtroom fell completely silent. I did not know this when I took this case. I learned it only last night when my sister contacted me. She told me about the day your ship saved them. She told me that when Kayla has nightmares about the pirates, she tells herself that Captain Hyun will protect her. Velrith turned to Magistrate Quorum. I cannot in good conscience ask this court to condemn the person who saved my family. Not because of biology, not because of abstract risk. Captain Hyun had the power to ignore that distress call. She had the power to destroy the pirates, but she chose protection. She chose mercy. That is not the behavior of a mindless predator. Velrith looked back at Hyun. You asked what defines a predator. I believe it is not biology but choice. The Vreln chose violence. You chose protection. That is the difference that matters. He returned to his position. The courtroom remained silent, processing what they'd just heard. Magistrate Quorum stood. His full height was impressive, towering over the assembled beings. I have considered all evidence presented in this case. I have reviewed historical records, scientific data, and personal testimony. I have consulted with senior council members, including Councillor Thex, whose wisdom I value greatly. The ancient magistrate's eyes swept across the chamber. The law exists to protect the innocent and maintain peace. It was created in the shadow of the Vreln War, born from fear and loss. That fear was justified. The Vreln were monsters who brought nothing but death. Hyun felt her heart pounding. This was it. The moment everything would be decided, but fear cannot be our only guide. If we allow fear to make us unjust, we become the monsters we fought against. Quorum looked at Hyun. Captain Hyun, you are a predator by biology. This is factually accurate. Your species evolved traits that exceed our threshold measurements. Hyun closed her eyes. Here it comes. However, the law was never meant to punish those who have done no wrong. It was meant to prevent another Vreln war. And I do not believe you represent that threat. Quorum's voice rang through the chamber. I find that biology alone is insufficient grounds for condemnation. Behavior, choice, and character must also be considered. Captain Hyun has demonstrated restraint, compassion, and a commitment to protecting others. These qualities do not align with the predatory behavior the law was designed to prevent. Therefore, I rule that Captain Hyun is not in violation of the Predator Protocol. She is free to retain her command and continue her service. The courtroom exploded. Cheers, protests, discussions in 1,000 languages. Hyun felt her knees weaken. Minyo caught her arm, grinning. Ambassador Jiwon was smiling, tears in her eyes. But Magistrate Quorum wasn't finished. He raised his hand for silence. Furthermore, I propose a modification to the Predator Protocol. We will establish a new classification for species like humanity. Species that possess predator traits but demonstrate consistent peaceful behavior. We will call them restrained predators, and they will be subject to monitoring but not automatic exclusion. He looked around the chamber. This classification acknowledges that biology is not destiny. That choice matters. That a species should be judged by its actions, not merely its evolution. The proposal was met with mixed reactions. Some species approved immediately. Others were hesitant. But it passed with a majority vote. After the trial ended, after the crowds dispersed, Hyun stood alone in the center of the now empty courtroom. She looked up at the empty viewing platforms, at the space where thousands had watched her be judged. Footsteps echoed. Velrith approached, his crystalline form less intimidating now, somehow smaller. Captain Hyun, may I speak with you? Of course. I wanted to thank you. For saving Kayla, for saving my sister. I didn't know when I took this case. If I had known, I would have refused it. Hyun smiled. You were doing your job. Protecting your people from what you feared most. But I was wrong. Not about the danger of predators, but about you. Velrith paused. Kayla wants to meet you. Would you be willing? I'd be honored. They stood together for a moment, predator and prey, prosecutor and defendant finding common ground. A week later, Hyun returned to her ship. Her crew was waiting, lined up in the docking bay. When she entered, they saluted. Then, breaking protocol entirely, they cheered. Doyen approached, grinning. Welcome back, Captain. It's good to be back. What now? Where do we go from here? Hyun looked at her crew, at the young faces full of hope and excitement. She thought about the galaxy, about all the species learning to see humanity differently, about the long road ahead. We do what we've always done, she said. We explore. We protect. We prove every single day that we're more than our biology, that we're defined by our choices, not our teeth. She walked to the bridge and took her captain's chair. Through the viewport, space stretched out before them, infinite and full of possibilities. Set course for the Endara sector. We have work to do. As the Aurora's Edge pulled away from the station, Hyun thought about everything that had happened. The trial, the evidence, the fear, and the hope. She thought about Velrith's niece, about a child who believed she would protect her. That belief, that trust, was more powerful than any predator instinct. It was what made humanity special. Not their strength or their teeth or their forward-facing eyes, but their ability to use that strength to protect, to choose kindness over cruelty, to build instead of destroy. Humanity had spent millions of years learning a simple truth. The greatest predators don't hunt alone. They build civilizations together. They protect each other. They choose every day to be better than their instincts demand. And that choice, Hyun knew, was what made them truly human. The stars stretched out before them and the Aurora's edge flew on, carrying its crew into the unknown. A ship full of predators who had chosen to be something more. A ship full of humans, complicated and contradictory and trying their best. It was enough. It had always been enough. And tomorrow they would prove it again.